Hi Kamal.
Hi, Trisha, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'll be your volunteer for this session, Kamal.
Oh, thank you. Can you just see? I'm trying to share. Can you just confirm you are able to see?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, are you able to see my screen?
Not yet. Yeah, I'm able to see it now.
Okay, perfect. So, what I think I'll have to do is when I'm sharing the screen, I will have to toggle between this and this. So, when I toggle, do you see that screen or do you see something else now?
I am still at Regional Scrum Gathering, Hyderabad.
Perfect, perfect. Because I was trying to get a hang of this tool, and
Okay.
I wasn't sure when I toggle, it shows a different view. So I think we are good because if they put something in the chat, then I will toggle and come here, and when I want
Sure.
to speak about something, I will show this. Okay.
I'll monitor the chats for you as well. You would want to take the question answers towards the end of the session, Kamal?
No, we can take it as and when because
Okay.
how I generally do trainings also. So we can do it
Okay.
then.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll announce it that ways then. I'll ask people to put in their questions.
We just have to figure out how many people. So you want me to stop sharing now and then start sharing later, or how do you want me to do?
That's okay, Kumar. It's fine. This would be anyways the starting slide, right?
Yeah, this would be the starting.
Sure. It's okay. We'll just 9 o'clock is the time, so we'll probably wait for 2 more minutes and then probably we'll get started.
Yeah, I think there are three sessions happening in parallel, right?
Yes.
So depends upon what people are interested in. So
Yeah.
attendance might be thin, I think,
Mhm.
because Ashutosh is a good friend and
Okay.
he's also runs his own YouTube channel. So
Okay.
he has an edge. Lots
Oh,
of people
okay.
have heard about him. So that's what it's unfair that I'm with in the same slot as Ashutosh. Hmm. So when I'm talking, can you see me now that I'm sharing that, or you can see only that slide?
No, I can see you. I can see my video as well, and
Okay,
then the slide
as
as
well as this. Okay, interesting. I should explore this tool more.
well.
Yeah. And how do we know how many people have joined the session? Is there a
So,
participant list somewhere?
in the session tab on your right hand side, you'll see all the people who've joined, the names of all the people who've joined, and then
Okay,
on the top, if you see, there's this button for leave, and then right next to it, there's this eye kind of thing, so you can see how many people are viewing us now. So right now there are 6 people
okay,
already in the
okay.
session.
Yeah, I think this is a good tool then. Yeah, we used something else earlier. So okay. How were the other sessions so far?
They were good, Kamal. So I was with Victor and Steve earlier in at 7 p.m. Then 8 p.m. I was with Victor. So the
Okay,
sessions went
Victor.
well.
Okay, Victor Lake, Singapore.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, okay, yeah, I know him quite well.
Uh-huh.
I had done the CSP launch for Regional Scrum Gathering Singapore.
Oh, okay.
So you can tell me when to get started and then we can get started.
Sure. We'll probably give it a minute more, and I'll start with the. I mean, I'll start with introducing you, and then we can get started. Just 30
Sure,
seconds to
you can give me a good introduction.
Sure.
Oh, I see
We
Vijay is
already
also.
have, yeah, 15 people on the call already.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this session on experiments in product agility. We have our speaker Kamal with us here. He's an agile coach with the Agile Practice Group at Cognizant, and he has overall 20 years of experience, then 9 years of experience as an agile practitioner. He started his journey as an agile journey as a developer in extreme programming team somewhere in 2012. and then to the role of a Scrum Master, and then to the role of an Agile coach. He also holds an executive MBA from IIM Bangalore and has spoken at many other regional Scrum gatherings as well. So, yeah, we are lucky to have you here, Kamal. Over to you.
Thanks for that good introduction, Trisha. And I am lucky to be have been given this opportunity to share some of my experiences. And yeah, I really look forward to doing this session, and I hope it would be worthwhile for all the participants. So we can get started. And so one thing is, I have already mentioned it's an experiment, and so you anything that you don't agree with, you can't hold it against me. So yeah, just joking. So yeah, so like you have so many movies these days, right, that are based on a true story. Oh, before we get started, so one of the working agreements that we can have is, as and when you have queries or questions for any slide, you can actually uh, we can discuss that question or query, because sometimes I see that towards the end of the session, if you park it, then you might have forgotten or it might be out of context. So I am okay with having taking questions even as we are doing the session for a particular slide. So let's keep
Um,
that as a working agreement. So yeah,
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
the session.
Just want to add. Please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A tab here and under your sessions section. The session is moderated, so I think all of you won't be able to turn on your audio or video, but we'll be monitoring the chat window very closely. So please feel free to do that. Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, Krish. Okay, so like I was saying, so many movies these days are based on true incidents. So uh, this session is also based on a true story. This is based on an assignment that I did with one of the largest health insurance companies in the US, with which had lots of subsidiaries and which spanned across USA and Canada. And like any other large organization, they of course had their own set of challenges and outcomes. What we are discussing today, the experiment that we are discussing today that they did, is based on one key area that they were focusing on and for which they were trying to find a solution. Since it was an experiment, it is still work in progress. And if I'm given another chance, then I can actually share the results of an extended experiment next year also. So yeah, so that is the background. And so one of the challenges that they were facing is the budget allocation that was being done at the leadership when they were doing the budget allocation for a particular product vision. They saw that one, that allocation was not being done in the direction in which they think they should have done, and we'll come to that in a minute. Secondly, the teams were working on items that were not in sync with the product vision. So these were the two problem areas that the organization was trying to solve using this experiment. So what the organization thought that the clients wanted and for which the budget was being allocated for. So you see this nice sedan here, a sports SUV kind of a vehicle, and the organization thought that the clients really wanted something of this sort, and they were allocating that kind of budget for the particular at the leadership level. But what the teams thought that the organization thought, and so this was the so you see those two problems. One, the organization was out of sync with what the client wanted, and secondly, the teams were out of sync with what the organization was trying to do. So if you have created some items at the portfolio level at the very top, and then when you're working at the scrum team level, the stories that get shown in the product backlog, the ones that get created and acted upon and worked upon and then delivered, they were out of sync with what the vision was and what the allocation was being done. Given that it was Scrum, at least they were and that they were doing DevOps, CI/CD kind of things, they were able to get quicker feedback, and so that mitigated the risk and reduced some of the challenges. But even assuming that they were following a 2 week sprint, right? Even assuming it's a 2 week sprint cycle, and you have multiple teams, so you can still think about the different kinds of budget allocation that had been done even for that 2 week sprint. say for more than 10 to 15 teams. And so, but at the end of 2 weeks, if they see something that's not what they thought, even though you have a goal, is definitely a big loss for the organization. So yeah, Scrum definitely helped given the faster feedback loops, but still they wanted to resolve that and look at some better solutions, wherein you could try to get it right the first time in terms of the requirements and what was being worked upon. So two problem areas to solve. And how did they do it? But before that, from agile practitioners perspective, as agile coaches, scrum masters, we are all coaches. We would love to see, whenever you are trying to experiment and bring in changes, you would love to see and want to see how associates and people who are going to work for and towards these changes, what is their response and how do they take it. So while we were doing the coaching and while we were trying to explain how this model works and what are the benefits and advantages, uh, we realized that not many were confident that this experiment would be successful. And there were many reasons for that. One is it's not a good idea. So on the left hand side, they were like, really, are you serious about it? And this is definitely not going to work. And we were telling them, at least give us a chance. See, it is an experiment. And the way we had packaged it also, that was one of the reasons why we had packaged it like, since it's a large organization, sometimes becomes bureaucratic. So you try to do something different. This is an opportunity for us to try and try to improve the way things are being done. But still, people still came with their own mindset. And we look at also how we were able to bring about some of the people. We were not fully successful in bringing around more than 60 to 70% of the folks at that point of time till when I was with the assignment. But it was even that 10 to 15% from naysayers to people who agreed with what we are trying to do was a good improvement. So yeah, this is something that we all want to see, resistance to change, and what is it that we can do about it. So we will touch upon this, but I wanted to highlight that at the very beginning because this is one important facet for agile coaches and those who want to bring about any kind of transformation, right? Whereas there was another half which was really excited about trying to experiment and do something different. And we actually try to understand from our self-learning perspective as to what set of 50% wanted to go ahead with it and what set of 50% didn't want to go ahead with it. So we realized that that set of 50% which didn't want to go ahead with it basically belonged to some departments which were being run in a more hierarchical or a command and control bureaucratic setup. And those who really wanted to experiment, had failed in the past and had already seen the benefits of experimentation and the fact that they were not penalized. So see, when we talk about culture, perhaps this is what we were talking about. And this is a feedback that we shared with the leadership when we tried to analyze what was that 50% who was willing and eager, in fact, to try it. So this was one learning from this experiment. And based on that feedback, then the leadership would have worked with those departments which were still not open. So, and a secondary benefit of conducting this experiment, and we'll see a few more secondary benefits of conducting this experiment. I now believe the stage has been set. So what was the experiment actually? It is something very simple. When you look at it, it is something very simple. You start with an empty product backlog. When I say empty product backlog, it's not as if your backlog has disappeared. It is that for the upcoming sprints, right? You start with a clean slate and you do not take any of the items that are still there in the product backlog. So in your mind's eye, you are starting with an empty product backlog. And how does that product backlog then get filled, right? And so you see the customers, you see the end users who are using the system and using the application. You take feedback from them. They are the ones who help create these product backlog items, and we'll see how they do it, how we take their feedback and how we do it. So that is the interesting part. So it was very simple. What is the role of the product owner? That also we will see, because the product owners are accountable for the product backlog and accountable for ordering the product backlog. But we'll again see what tweak we brought here. So you start with that mindset of an empty product backlog, and the organization takes a decision, rather a firm decision, that the teams will work uh, even at the program level with the items or on the items that have essentially been created based on the end user feedback, the actual users feedback, the customer feedback. So good so far. Any questions or queries? Okay. Based on a true story, you're coming. So let's see now. This is a value stream. This is an example of a value stream. I have tried to contextualize it to the Indian situation. And so, since it was a health insurance company, where one of the value streams is you're raising the claims, and as part of the claim process, you have some queries that get raised. So, claims get raised. So, somebody gets admitted to, say, a hospital or a clinic, and for that, a claim gets raised, perhaps by the hospital. And when a claim gets raised, the way it works is you take inputs. So the claims have an input within the health insurance company. And say if that health insurance company has multiple subsidiaries and different geographical regions. So the way it works in the US is every state might have its, of those 50 plus states, 50 states, every state might have its own set of rules. And based on where the claim has been raised, which state, so the rules get pulled automatically from the system and gets saved in a data store somewhere. So this is your value stream stage. So this is your first value stream stage. This is your second value stream stage. Then for the claim raised, you collect all the data. You collate the data that is part of the claims that have been raised. For the, let's take one claim that got raised, and all the data that was there in that claim has pulled from the form and again kept in another data store. Now, this is the interesting part. Now, they try to do some automated validation based on the rules pulled here. So, based on the rules pulled, based on the data in the claim, they are trying to do automated validation. And this was one key performance improvement that in terms of faster resolution that the organization had been working on. What they were trying to do is they had seen some patterns where lots of claims could actually be automated without having a manual process, especially for the simple ones. So they had come up with that automated validation based on rules. And if there were any queries based on the rules and the data, they would raise queries. Okay. And then those queries would go back to the entity which had raised the claims. Good so far? This was the value. It's a very simple value stream that I've tried to contextualize so that we understand it in India. Now the question to the participants is, given these value stream stages, which value stream stage you think the customers would be interested in expediting, right? So if you are a customer and you think that the health insurance company exists to serve you well, which value stream stage as a customer you think that the health insurance company should expedite or work on or improve so that you are served better? So let's see some answers in the chat. Raise questions. I see raise questions. Raise query. Okay. So those who automated validation, good. Let's see one more, and then automated validations. Okay. So those who think raise queries or automated validations, you can perhaps unmute yourself and share why you think so. I don't know whether there's an option to unmute, or you can put it in the chat also. A simple one-liner. We can't.
Yeah.
Okay, you're okay. That's not a problem. You can put a one-liner in the chat as to why you think that it's either automated validation or raise queries. Why? Any guesses? Larger number of claims can be clear. We are looking at you're the customer. If I would like this flow should end early. Yes, okay. Good good input. Automated validation brings some value to the customer. Okay, beautiful. Everyone desires the claim amount early. That's great. That's beautiful. Yeah. I if I am put myself in the shoes, I would think that too. Customer want query to be resolved earlier. I think these are all good inputs. So I will tell you what the organization thought. Okay. Uh, what the customers wanted. So we are all customers, and we basically wanted to raise queries. This we wanted to expedite. You all are all right. What the customers wanted was expediting raise queries, which means that in order to expedite raising queries, because while you are trying to do that and you have raised those queries, and if those queries need to be answered, it is better that you raise those earlier rather than later, because at that point of time the customers are perhaps already in the hospital and there is already some anxiety, so that emotional element is in, right? So there is already some anxiety, and that suspense of what will happen. I have raised the claim and now they have raised the queries, and we better answer those queries earlier rather than later, otherwise the resolution would not happen. So you all are all right. 100% marks to all of you, all of your pass. So question is, what do you think the organization did, right? So which value stream stage the organization focused on? What do you all think? Any guesses what the organization focused on? Pull the data and call it. Perfect. I think you all have already seen my slide before, but I don't remember putting this in my slide. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Full marks again. The organization, while it was trying to serve the end users and customers better, it did not instead think that raising queries is what the end users want, uh, in order for them to help serve them better, right? Instead, uh, they focused on this part, collating the data from the claim, because according to them, raising claims and pulling data, especially rules, those rules were very complex, and they thought if we do this, then we are serving the end users better. And all the focus all along had been on this, because this was very, very complex. You're collating data from the claim, and then you are doing that based on certain rules, and those rules span across. So you might have collected more data, but you want to do it based on some rules. Given that you have 50 states, you span across North America, US, and Canada. That's what the organization was focusing on. Okay. So what means do you think the organization used to collect this data from the customers? Given that they now understood that the customers, what do you think the organization would have done? How do you think the organization would have collected this data? What means they would have used? And yes, it's not the, I will give you a hint. It was not the, okay, I will not give you a hint. Let's see what you are saying. Automate the collection of data. Okay. Good attempt. Yes. Any other guesses? What do you all think? How they would have gone about doing it? Because this is one interesting part. This is one of the interesting things that they did. And this was one of the reasons why we all saw that resistance earlier, where 50% of the people in the organization were resisting this change. So it has got to do with that. So yes, what they did was they started tagging. They used special unique tags for each one of these value stream stages. So I'm just giving you a simple, you're just looking at one value stream and a couple of value stream stages in that value stream. what the organization did was they came up with a tagging mechanism. It's like your SKUs. So suppose you have 1,000 products in a retail organization, in an in a retail company, and the way you track those thousands of different products is you use the concept of SKUs, which is basically each SKU is unique. So what they did was they did lots of homework here, and each value stream stage was given a unique tag. And like you do to make it very from a simplicity perspective to understand it better, say you have four stickies and you are a group, and you want to figure out which is the sticky which most of the people are interested in. So you have four solutions to a problem, and you are a group of say 10 people, and you are interested in knowing what the majority of the people are interested in. So you do voting. When you do dot voting, that's the key with the solution which gets maximum number of dots, right? You go ahead with the solution that majority of the participants want to go with. Similar to that, and similar to the SKU concept, they came up with unique tags for all the value stream stages across all the value streams that existed in the organization. And similar to that dot voting, they started collecting data for that tag as to what the maximum number of customers were interested in. And one thing that they did here was they kept out a few key elements. They kept out the weighted average. So, for example, what large organizations generally do is they will try to see which customer is the high paying customer, which customer pays the maximum number of money, for which customer should we develop features, right? But here we are talking about end customers. So you could have a corporate setup and say 1,000 employees in a corporate who would be interested. So what many organization might want to do, what service suppliers or service providers might want to do is that organization which as a group has 1,000 people, they will give some higher weight to that compared to another organization which has fewer people. uh, what this health insurance company realized is if we do that weighted average, we are still not benefiting the maximum number of people, because here the focus was really benefiting the maximum number of people, given that their motive was not just profit. So their motive was also serving, because it's a health insurance company, and many organizations came around to this thought, especially during COVID times. So they kept it simple, and it was not a weighted average dot voting, it was just simple dot voting, but based on unique SKU like tags for every value stream stage. And how did they do it? Customer service associates who were on calls with the end users, usage metrics. Somebody also said automate the collection of data. Yes, automated the collection of data by using those usage metrics. You have got lots of those tools, right, which actually see. So what is business value? What is valuable to the customer? There are tools these days where you see the number of transactions, what the end users are using. So you roll out 10 features, but if the end users are using just 4 or 5 features, you can actually capture that. So using those tools, using those usage metrics, and your customer service associates who are generally sitting at the end of the value chain in the hierarchy, they were giving inputs. They were the ones who were working with the end users, helping create these items that would go into the product backlog. So here what you see is these customer service associates, they sit here, they take inputs, and these end users have been tagging the value stream stages. And so based on that, the customer service associates take that, help create these product backlog items. Now this 50%, right, this 50% generally they think that their authority is being diluted, and that was one of the reasons why they were resisting, and they understood it pretty fast. What we wanted to ensure was that they understand that their jobs are not at stake, that they don't feel insecure, that this is just an experiment, and if this experiment succeeds, then we would be generating higher value for the entire organization. So please look at the larger picture. And while doing this experiment, we ensured that we had spoken to the leadership so that nobody is actually fired just because this experiment is self-sustaining. Otherwise, it will send wrong signals in the organization. So as agile coaches and practitioners, we also had to work on that aspect with the leadership. So when we do any kind of changes, we also need to ensure that there is that feel safe, or that people think that they will be safe even after this change comes about. But anyway, this was an experiment. It was supposed to be short lived. So that was one of the reasons why there was resistance. And so the priority of the items in the product backlog or in the backlogs was also based on that dot voting. And so the product owners who typically are accountable for the priority, they had to take a back seat during the duration of this experiment, and instead allow the customers base priority to take precedence and get the teams to work on that, right? So this takes care of one part. So if you see here, this takes care of this first part where the organization wanted to know what the clients wanted. So now the organization knows what the clients want, right? And because the priority in the backlog has been set by the end users. I will just take a pause for a minute. And do you all think that this is really doable in a very large organization? Yes, no. Imagine the product owners taking a back seat and the customers deciding. This is really the voice of the customer, isn't it? Yes, no, can't say. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, they are saying yes.
And I want to hear from the rest of you all towards the end of the session, whether you all have come across this something similar, and whether it's doable in your organization also, because that's the learning that I get from this session. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, so why this discipline and prescription? Why did we need to do this? Because the product owners also always have the best interest of the customer at heart. What we realized that if we did not have this discipline and this prescription, right, there were lots of good to have features in the backlog that had been created that were yet to be taken up. So they might have taken up precedence again over what this was. So we needed to really come up with this kind of a working agreement and put this discipline. And secondly, just think about it. Very often we talk about the customers not knowing what is good for them. And that is where your product management team and product leads come into play, and they try to come up with innovations. So do you all think that innovations from the point of view of the end user or the customer not knowing what they want would come to a halt if we do this kind of a discipline or we put this prescription in place? Do you all think that innovation or the end user not knowing what they want would get impacted? I'm not sure whether you all got it. So Steve Jobs, I think Steve Jobs once said that, the end user, or I don't know, don't sorry, let me not quote him. So it is often said, or sometimes said, that the end users don't know what is good for them, and only when you show them some features and they start using it, then they know that this product should have existed and it's good for them, right? So that is innovation. Do you think that that kind of innovation will come to a halt if these kinds of experiments are done? Because this was one challenge, or this was one question that the organization was grappling with when they wanted to roll out this experiment. Okay, I see.
Um, yeah,
Innovation.
innovation always helps. That's from Aditya. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, innovation always helps, Aditya. But what the organization was grappling with, say, if you are just going to work on features which are being dot pointed, right? So those features are already there. But what about those features that don't exist yet? And if you're always going to work in this model, how can you roll out those features, right? So that innovation, where will it come from? Innovation will not be halted as POs have a direction to innovate. That's a good one. What else? That's a good one. With brainstorming. Okay. So what happened was, for that 50%, I will tell you what actually happened, right? Innovations did not come to a halt nor did new items stop being created in the backlogs. What instead happened was something very interesting. With the users deciding what was more important, the product owners, the way the product owners and the product managers started thinking about their own product, right? Uh, that started changing. They were like, they were one amongst the customers, even if they had not used in reality use their own product that they, because it's not always that you use the same product that you have developed. But in this case, this and this forced them to think like end users. We do talk about personas, we draw that persona map, we do that all those mapping, but this really helped them, because you're not coming up with a persona map, you are actually living that. So this actually helped innovation, and this was something that we were trying to explain to the naysayers also, when making them see. So this was an interesting output of this experiment, which we had also not thought would work. The product team became better because of the things that the end users were doing, and because of them looking at what the end users want. So innovation did not come to halt. And to be very honest with you, we were not anticipated that this thing would happen, right? So this is where draw personas, and you come up with a persona map, but this is much better than that. And this was just that eureka moment, and we realized it pretty late when we saw the backlog, like we were wow. And we saw a couple of other benefits also. So yes, coming back to this, the second part of the problem before I move forward. So the second part of the problem is where the users, where the teams were working on something that was not in sync. Now that you have brought in the value stream stage, you're creating user stories based on only those value stream stage, and that is the only thing goes into the product backlog, right? So we already discussed whether this is too prescriptive and whether this is innovative, and is it an anti-pattern. So this kind of, so we talk about Scrum being a framework, and on the other hand, you have Kanban, which is absolutely nothing, and then you have XP. So do you all think this is too prescriptive? Because some of the teams said that, what, this is too prescriptive. You're not allowing us to create our own user stories. And you talk that we are self-managing teams. We have that carte blanche. You are self-managing teams, but within a purview of the vision of the organization, isn't it? So sometimes that self-managing is misunderstood, but it's always within the purview of the vision of the budget that the organization allocates, right? So do you all think it is too prescriptive, given that background? Because that is how we sold it. As coaches, we were convinced that this works, this experiment is useful. But some of them thought that it's too prescriptive, right? When the product owners are not able to create items on their own based on their understanding. So we are really enforcing lots of rules. So do you all think it was too prescriptive? Do you all think it's an anti-pattern? Yes, no? No? Good. Okay. I don't see others answering, but yeah, we took it as a no. We also said that it is for the, because if the organization survives by delivering more value, the all the teams survive, and it is good for everyone. So we also thought, and then it was just a short-lived experiment to start off with, and this was real inspection and adaptation, right? You do an experiment, and this time you're doing an experiment like a proper full process. You're experimenting with the process, and if that works, it's good. If it doesn't work, then you inspect and adapt. So yes, it might have been looked prescriptive, but it was still an experiment. So if you look at it, these are all simple ideas, isn't it? Developing features based on the voice of the customer is such a simple idea. Study hard and practice to get good marks in exams is such a simple idea, right? We all know about it. Exercise, sleep well, abstain from junk food to live a healthy life. Generally, you become healthy. But all of these simple ideas have one thing in common, right? They need discipline. And so this discipline is sometimes needed. And enforcing of rules sometimes is needed. and but it is for the larger good, and it you just need to ensure that you are not using that to bring back that anti patterns of moving away from servant leadership, humility, are not going back to those old days of command and control. So while you're creating new rules, another thing, and you're trying to bring in some kind of a discipline, you should always remember, and this is something that we needed to keep on reminding ourselves, don't take it to that extreme end where it gets degenerated, right? And so that was another learning, that was another undercurrent, that yes, in some areas you might need to have discipline, but then you need to ensure that you do not degenerate into the old command and control, or bringing in lots of bureaucracy. Because in some sense, if you look at it, you some could say it is bureaucracy, right? Because this is what you're supposed to do and nothing beyond this. But within that framework, so that we needed to ensure that that happens, and we needed to continuously remind ourselves. And there were instances where some leadership said that, okay, now that we have this discipline, let's try this also. Why don't we ask them to adhere to some other things that might be good for the organization, right? So we needed to ensure that it does not degenerate, and that was another learning for us as agile practitioners. So simple ideas, and what are the other interesting things that happened along the way? So what happened was, the value streams that you see, so there were multiple value streams, and very often what might have happened is a value stream might have been defined quite early, and then why was a particular thing brought into place? Nobody really remembers, especially if it was done many years back, right? So you do something, but you forget why it was done in the first place. So value streams came into being. You all had modules that got associated with those value stream stages, and then people just followed that. When we did this exercise, and given that everything was being done at the value stream stage, questions were being asked as to whether this value stream has kept up with the times, right? Does it really serve the purpose it was supposed to have? Has it kept out of sync with the modules that are being developed, with the functionality that's being implemented? And based on that input, some of the value streams did get updated, and some of the value stream stages within the value streams also got updated. So it was a continuous churn, right? So even as you see the challenge here, even as your clients or the end users are dot voting some of the value stream stages, because now you all have started looking at the value streams and the value stream stages, even your value streams and value stream stages are changing. And just think about the optimization that was brought about at the organization level. I think that was one very great secondary benefit that arose from this exercise. And based on the end users, inputs from the end users, of course, I already mentioned that the product owners also, they took a relook at what the end users really wanted. So in terms of continuous improvement and next steps, right? Do we expect the end users to give us guidance on future product offerings? And if so, because so far we have voted, I already discussed this, right? That innovation, where will this innovation come from? Now, in terms of next steps, do you want to conduct another experiment? And in that experiment, now the customers somehow tell you that, hey, you don't have this feature at all. And that's what, as part of your customer research, the product management, product users are supposed to do, isn't it? That's what customer research is all about, where you go out in the field and then you get input from the end users. But instead, is there a way that your product owners, product managers, the business team does not go in the field, right? And the end users who have been dot voting now actually come up to you, because you have built some kind of a funnel, which is a pull based, where the priority is decided by the end users. But now you want the end users to go a step beyond that. You're empowering them to go beyond that. And that empowerment is, we are still not coming to you. We are still not doing customer research. But you are telling us. And how is that doable? So in terms of continuous improvement and next steps, that is what the organization was trying to figure out how to make it happen, right? I hope you all understood the difference between how customer research is typically being done, where you go and talk, do surveys. So we are saying we will not do all that, right? Now the customers have got very close to us. Now you tell us. And second was, at what point do we go back to that innovative features that can be offered, where we also saw that innovation was already being driven because the product owners were actually looking at it from the end users of customers perspective. So I think that's all that we had, and I would be glad to take any inputs and questions, or would be okay to dwell into any other part of the session that you would want me to. But this was the experiment that was largely conducted, and based on what I have kept in touch with my fellow agile coach from that journey, and from what I've learned is they were able to bring about some change from the naysayers to the yes. It moved from 50 to 70%, like I mentioned earlier. And they are very happy with the experiment that's being conducted, because it has also helped them move from a very large organizational typical traditional bureaucratic setting, to an organization which is becoming more and more agile, especially so really agile as an enterprise agility, all the departments. So that has opened those shackles also. So yeah, that is the other secondary advantage or benefit that they are seeing. How long it will be sustained, there are questions. When the main agile coaches or the transformation agents, they move out, and the second rung leadership is created within the organization, whether they will be able to sustain it, and or whether they will degenerate into how it was being done in the past. That is something that only time will tell. And if I live to see another day, I'll probably share it with you all, and if you all are interested. So that was the last slide that I had. So the session also I try to keep simple, like the experiment that was simple. And if there are any questions or queries, I can take. And else we are good, and then we can go back to doing whatever we were doing. Okay, I saw one comment. It was not prescriptive. Okay, that was from an earlier slide. Yes, it was not. It's more aligned with business needs. So,
Kamal, we have one question. How long will such experiments run?
how long will such experiments run? Okay, so that was a question that the team was, that the organization was grappling with, and the problem was that they did not have an answer at that point of time. And they were actually looking at that. They had thought that that 50% had it become uh, what had it become 70%, where the naysayers had increased from 50 to 70, then it would have been very easy to knock the experiment off. But because the naysayers had decreased and the yesers had increased to 70%, they wanted to conduct this experiment for a slightly more time. But the concern was always this: what happens to the new features that were there in the backlog? And now what they are trying to do is they are trying to see the hit on the revenue, whether it's hitting the revenue, because that's one part we have not looked at, right? And even though this might be an organization which is not for profit only, but to serve, at some point they would also want to see, right, how it's hit their bottom line. So that is another thing that they're looking at, but we don't have an answer yet. We don't have the answer. That's the only answer. How long such a thing? No idea yet. For now, they are continuing, but yeah, if new leadership also comes in, we don't know. Have you used Safe for this project? Yeah, I don't know why the question came, but yeah, Safe was used. Modified form of Safe was used. It was called, I hope not many would know about it. So I'll give you all the acronym without giving you the full form. So it was called MOAD, MOAD, which was a wrapper over Safe. So it was a customized Safe that was used, but even though Safe was used, we were still safe, because we ensured that the authenticity of Scrum Agile still stays. But yeah, it was a customized, safe wrapper that was used, that was called MOAD, MOAD, that was used. So, okay. So, if there are no other questions,
There is one more question that came up.
yeah,
Should we also consider the adverse effects or loss in productivity of in terms of product owner responsibility?
that's a very good point, right? Because loss in productivity in terms of PO responsibility. Yes, this is why many of the POs were pushing back that 50% of naysayers, they were also insecure. But then as the program continued, we also realized that in terms of them having an ad hoc, impromptu understanding of what the end user. So while on the one hand, you're taking away a little bit of, taking away a large part of what is generally a product owner accountability, which is ordering the product backlog, right? Which is a very large part, because that is how you have empowered the product owner. On the other hand, the product owner now understands much better by the virtue of working closely or understanding what the end users want. So, in that sense, it is not loss of productivity if you look at it from the outcome based model, because you're very close to what the actual outcome should be, what the value. So, the other aspect of a product owner is the product owner is responsible for maximizing the value of the product. So, actually, the product owner is maximizing to the very highest extent the value of the product by not ordering the priority, by not prioritizing the items, instead allowing the end users to prioritize them. So that is the dilemma where the you're generating maximum value by stepping back. But yes, of course, one part of your accountability or your empowerment has been taken away and given to customers, end users. uh, it is not somebody else in the organization who has been empowered to do that. So in that sense, you're safe. Whether the end users can continue to do that, I don't think so. And that's why it's an experiment which definitely needs to come to an will definitely come to an end. Or it would be some combination. I think the way I look at it, it will be some combination. But definitely at some point the product owners will come back, will take back that accountability of prioritizing, because it cannot go beyond. The end users cannot come up with innovations all the time, because at this point of time they are just polling or dot voting what already exists. How much of an innovation they can come up at some point, I don't think, because you do need experts in this area, right? So that's what I think. And yeah, so I don't know whether that answers your question, or whether that was, yeah. So how did this experiment help to solve the first problem? The first problem got solved because the organization themselves did not know what the end users wanted. This time the end users now were deciding what they wanted, right? So that is where the organization got it wrong. And the fact that the value streams were getting updated, right? So that's how it solved the first problem. Second problem, of course, it was very easy. The teams were just working based on the value stream stages. So that's how it got solved. Okay. Trisha, I would also want to understand whether at the end, are you taking feedback, and whether that I can get some feedback for the session if there are, once we are done and there are no questions, etc.
We are
Sure.
taking in the form of polls, Kamal. I think probably we can share the poll results with you.
Okay, because this is the first time I have presented this topic, right? Because the experiment, I have presented all other topics, but this was an experiment for me also, presenting this experiment. So,
We'll
Yeah,
share the poll.
I request all the participants to kind of, we have shared the poll. I request everyone to kind of answer so that it will also help the trainer to get some amount of insights.
yeah,
Yeah,
it will help me
I,
experiment in the future also.
I,
The
I see
current,
we have 25 participants and only 11 of us have voted. So request all the other participants to please vote. And I think we still have a few minutes to go. If there are any questions, I think we'll be happy to take them as well. Feel free to post your questions too.
and if there are no questions, we can give them a few minutes back. And we are all good. Because after all, it's time box. I think that was the intent, right? 1 hour is a time box. You need not utilize the entire 1 hour. Is
Sure.
what I understood. Yeah. So
Sure,
Yes,
Kamal.
that's the concept of time boxing.
I request everyone to use the poll. Still, we see 17 only. Request everyone to use the poll option to give your feedback.
So Trisha, Surya, we can call it a day whenever you all want to. Okay,
Sure,
because there are no questions, so it's up to
sure.
you all now. Back to you all, and I stop sharing.
We have created the poll. Please, I request everyone to answer in the poll.
Okay, we have time, right?
Yes,
Okay, let's utilize this time for doing something interesting. Now, I also saw, so I got a chance to see some product owners and they have put. So, do you all think that you all would want to conduct such an experiment in your organization, or you all are doing something similar and that you all would want to share? That would be a learning for me on the lines of what we just presented. So, yeah. So do you all think, okay, so those who are product owners, especially here, do you all think that this is an experiment that is doable in your organization? Will your organization allow you to do such an experiment?
You all can answer in the chat.
and there is a question also from Bakar bin Saad. Should I read it out, Kamal? Are
Oh,
you?
I see it. This is the same as servant leadership. Oh, that's the question.
No, no. The question is experiments that you mentioned can only be used for product development or can it be used for any kind of activities?
Oh, which so if I've understood it right, experiments like when you're listening to the end user, is that what you mean? I don't see that. For any kind. Uh, so I'm not sure I understood that.
Baker,
Uh,
if you could elaborate that any kind of activities, it would be really helpful because it's too generic to kind of answer. When you say any kind of activities, could you be little specific to at least one or two activities if you can quote that will really help. I didn't see any change in that question. I mean,
okay, no problem. Shall we wrap it up then? If
yes,
we are
yes,
done.
yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, once again, thanks for this opportunity. I hope those who attended and participated got some value out of this experiment. And let's see whether you all would want to try it in your organization. If it's doable. So thanks for that once again. And
Thank
bye
you,
bye.
thank you, Kamal Tejan. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Kamal. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Tusha, would you be sharing that results of the poll?
Yes, Kamal. I'll share that with you.
Okay. Thank you. After this session?
Sure. I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Good
Thank you.
night.
Bye-bye.